Welcome to FSI FlashTalk, where the best experts in the world come together to talk about football. My name is Alberto Fílter. I'm member of FSI Lab, and I will be the host of this FlashTalk. As you know, cold water immersion is one of the most common recovery strategies in football. It's widely used in professional and non-professional routines, especially during congested schedules, and even when players only compete once a week. We can also see ice bath in football academies as part of recovery protocols in every week. So today we are going to talk about how post-match and post-training cooling affects muscle ground from physiological point of view. And to talk about that, we have with us Milan Betz. He's PhD candidate in nutrition, exercise, and muscle physiology and M3 research group. He just published an very important paper in medicine and science in sport and exercise about the acute effect of cooling on muscle parameters. So thank you so much, Milan, to be part of this FSA Flash Talk. Thank you for being here.
Very welcome. Thanks for having me.
So the first question is direct to the point. And the question is, could you talk about your last paper about cooling therapies after exercise, the main finding, methodology, and how do you apply this study?
Yeah, of course. I think you already said it quite well, that cold water immersion is still very popular in many sports, also like you said, in football. With, of course, the idea that it can improve muscle recovery. However, there are actually more and more studies now showing that it may actually impair muscle recovery and adaptation. And also a recent study from our group, from a colleague of mine, Cas Fuchs, he showed that cold water immersion, when you perform it after a bout of resistance exercise and also protein ingestion, that muscle protein synthesis is lower. And this is an important process of muscle recovery and adaptation. So in this new study, we kind of follow up on that. I wanted to see whether this effect could be due to changes in perfusion of the muscle, so blood flow in the muscle. So that is kind of the main topic of the new study that we now did. And in this study, we kind of used a similar protocol as we did before. So we call it a within subject study design, which means that within a single research participant, you have an intervention and a control at the same time. And in our case, we would have a cooling intervention in one leg, and then the other leg would serve as a control. And in this case, we would do 20 minutes of cooling with one leg in 8 degrees very cold water, while the other leg was in thermoneutral water, which was 30 degrees, to look for differences. So briefly, how the experiment looked like was that we assessed, with using ultrasound, we assessed blood flow, and we could do this in the larger arteries. So this is a relatively simple technique that shows us how much blood is flowing towards the leg, which is of course interesting, but it doesn't really tell you the whole story, because the blood flow in the artery also includes blood flow to not only to muscle tissue, but also to all the other tissues like the skin, bones, tendons, fat. So we wanted to go one level deeper and really look at the muscle specifically. And even within the muscle, we wanted to focus on the smallest blood vessels, because at the smallest blood vessels, that is also where the actual exchange happens. For example, where the nutrients are delivered to the muscle tissue. So you can do that with with several techniques, but one technique is contrast enhanced ultrasound, which is kind of similar to normal ultrasound, but you need to have some kind of contrast to make the ultrasound stronger. And in this case, it might sound a bit weird, but we used gas-filled microbubbles. So these are microscopically small microbubbles that can increase the signal from the ultrasound. And these are so small that we infuse them just in a vein, and then they circulate throughout the whole body and also circulate through those very small blood vessels. And there they can then increase the signal. So by using this technique, we could measure what we call microvascular perfusion. So in the microvasculature, the very smallest blood vessels, within the vastus lateralis muscle, which is just the big muscle from the upper leg. So in our study, we could do this technique at several time points. So we would do it at rest when they would just come in the morning. We put them on a bed, we let them rest for a bit, and then we measure all these measurements using the ultrasound. Then they would do a bout of resistance exercise. So in this case, that was leg press and leg extension, quite heavy as well. Then again, we would perform all these measurements again. And then we would do the cooling protocol. So like I said before, one leg was submerged in cold water, the other leg in thermoneutral water. Again, several times we would measure blood flow using the ultrasound. But right after the cold water immersion, all the participants also received a recovery drink. And in this drink, there was, let's say, a special kind of amino acid. So an amino acid is the building block of a protein. And this amino acid was special in a way that we can trace it throughout the body. So we call it an amino acid tracer. So when they drink it, a couple hours later, we can track how it gets taken up or how it gets into the circulation by taking blood samples. But also, 4 hours after the drink, we would take a muscle biopsy. So we literally just take a small piece of muscle from the upper leg. And then in that piece of muscle, we could also measure how much of this amino acid tracer was actually built in the muscle already. So I think that is in the main lines how the experiment looked like. So as for the results, we saw that, of course, as you would expect, after exercise, you see a very large increase in muscle blood flow, especially also in the microvascular blood flow. But then after the cooling protocol, you actually saw a very steep decline in muscle blood flow in the cold leg compared to the control leg, which was around 60 to 70% lower, which is actually quite substantial if you think about it. And even 3 hours after the cooling intervention, we could still see that muscle blood flow was lower in the cold leg compared to the control leg. And then by taking the muscle biopsy at the end, we could see that during that same recovery phase, less of those special amino acids were built into the muscle, like new muscle proteins, in the cold leg compared to the control leg. And then we even saw quite a strong correlation between the two. So between the difference between the legs for muscle blood flow and the difference between the legs for the incorporation from the amino acid into muscle. So that does provide us some insight that the reduction in blood flow because of cold water immersion is likely, quite an important aspect why we observe sometimes the negative effects on, in this case, muscle protein synthesis, or what is also observed previously, that you see less muscle growth when you do it repeatedly over a longer period of time.
Incredible. Yeah, it's incredible. This very invasive study that is so difficult to apply in football context, as you know. So, Milan, for those people that work in football and apply cold water immersion, every weeks after the match or after intense training. Normally, is in the Monday, the match day +1. What's advice for them?
I think it does depend on the context a little bit. I think in a training phase where the adaptation of the muscle, whether it's growing or just becoming, let's say, better, having greater endurance capacity or anything where, or any moment in time where you want the muscle to adapt to your training, um, I would advise against it because there's quite some work now, our study, but also some other studies showing that, yeah, several processes underlying, yeah, in the muscle can be negatively affected by the cold. I think after a match, it might be a bit of a different story because it could be that if you have, for example, matches quite close to each other, maybe muscle adaptation is less of an importance. And then there are, of course, still quite some athletes who really swear by it in the sense that they just feel better. They feel, for example, less muscle soreness, and that then helps them to perform better. There is still a bit of an issue of the placebo effect because you, of course, cannot really control this. A person knows whether they just did an ice bath or not. So this is not really something that you can control for. And it does seem, if you look at the literature, that the placebo effect seems to play a role in this, at least partly. So I think it's still a bit difficult to say because we now show that you do impair nutrient delivery, which can still be important when you have several matches after each other. So this is a bit of a difficult topic because it's not exactly what we studied, and I think it's also less clear at the moment. But I would definitely be cautious with it.
So in that context, in academy, for example, in which the idea is to improve the adaptation of football player to create in long term a professional football player, makes sense apply the cold water immersion.
Yeah, I think if you really look at muscle adaptation, so let's say a football player wants to get stronger, maybe you sprint faster, stuff like that, then I would definitely avoid it. At least what, of course, we studied was quite a strong cooling protocol. So we did 20 minutes, which is quite an extreme protocol. I would expect to see similar results with shorter protocols, although the effect might be a bit smaller, the negative effect, but I still think it would be there. So yeah, I still would advise against it when muscle adaptation is the main goal at the moment.
Mhm. Okay, so the last question is about the future. What is your next project in this way?
Next project. That's actually a really good question because I have no clue at the moment. I'm currently just finishing up my PhD thesis. So this was one of the projects in my thesis, and I had some other projects also related to muscle blood flow, but more in the context of aging and exercise. So it's a bit different than this.
Mhm.
And at the moment, yeah, I'm just finishing up all my projects and writing my thesis, and hoping that I can do some more work soon. But at the moment, I sadly don't know yet.
So I will continue looking for your research. Are amazing your contribution to. Do you think that is only in aging, but maybe this be applied to football context for sure because there are a lot of common factors in different areas of knowledge. So it will be an honor and pleasure having you here, Milan. Thank you so much for your contribution.
Thanks for having me.
And to the listener, thank you so much for being here, and see you in the next episode.